Morning, folks. Afternoon, folks, and evening, folks, depending on where you are in the world. I keep forgetting I'm global. I have to stop saying good morning. Welcome to the EDI Jester. It was a sunny weekend afternoon 4 years ago when Elizabeth discovered her 13-year-old daughter was binding her developing breasts with packing tape. The DIY chest binders have caused lasting physical damage to her child's nerves. I used to use whatever I could to get my hands on, says Elizabeth's child Jack, who is now 17 and identifies as a boy. I can't feel half of the skin on my chest now. I wouldn't wish gender dysphoria on anyone. It's basically a living hell, Jack says. Going through puberty sucks, and if you're given the option to jump to the other side, a lot of people would. I was told that I could just transition and become a man, and it would be that simple. But there are a lot of complicated issues, because when you really get down to it, the way gender dysphoria works is not that different to something like an eating disorder. And you don't just give people with eating disorders liposuction. Such a notion flies in the face of mainstream psychiatry, which stresses gender dysphoria is not a mental illness, and the approach broadly adopted in medicine to affirm a child's perceived gender as the basis of therapy and treatment. But Jack's mother was in no doubt she was faced not with a child who believed she was truly a boy, but with a girl who was desperate to hold back the march of puberty, her visceral disgust at developing womanhood taking place amid a peer backdrop of hypersexualized young teenagers, obsessed with gender identity, increasingly exposed to pornography, and immersed in online trans culture. The rise of transgender culture, along with its corresponding backlash, is triggering rancorous debate within politics, medicine, and education. But those at the coalface are children. Hundreds of teenagers around the country are currently being treated with puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones at gender clinics in children's hospitals as they medically transition gender. A decade ago, the number of children seeking treatment for gender dysphoria was small. Victoria's Royal Children's Hospital Gender Clinic, the largest in the nation, was treating just over 100 patients in 2014. By the end of last year, its patient numbers had swelled to about 1,100, 674 of them girls. 56 of these children were on puberty blockers, and 49 had been prescribed cross-sex hormones. Perth Children's Hospital was treating 597 children last year, 443 of them girls. Around the world, a reassessment is taking place of the dominant model of gender-affirming medicine. UK paediatricians raised concerns that doctors at London's Tavistock Clinic were failing to undertake comprehensive assessments and healthcare of vulnerable children, and last year the clinic was ordered to close. Britain is moving towards using puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones only in the context of clinical trials. New South Wales senior physicians have also voiced misgivings, with the leaders of Westmead Children's Hospital's Gender Clinic questioning in a recent academic paper whether the explosion of young people experiencing gender distress, particularly when it is late onset, emerging only in adolescence, was driven in part by a so-called social contagion. The absence of prior history raised questions that the particular group of adolescents were being drawn into the construct of gender dysphoria because of some evolving social process, the doctors said. Only a fraction of the children suffering gender distress and dysphoria end up at the large hospital clinics. There are many thousands of other families navigating the transgender minefield largely on their own. Families have no rulebook for how to proceed. They are banding together for support in online groups and clandestine lounge room meetings, sharing experience, research, and frequently personal devastation. Amid the raging public culture war, they have navigated their children's journeys privately. These families say the time has come for an honest accounting of a vexed issue for which there should be no binary response or preferred solution. I always felt like an outsider, says Jack, who, like a sizable proportion of children being treated at gender clinics around the country, is on the autism spectrum. I know I think differently. I didn't really have the signs of being classically trans, but I didn't fit in with the girls around me. I didn't like how My body was out of control. Everything in my life was out of control. I have some kind of deeply rooted self-hatred and disconnect with my body. It's a feeling like you're something other than your body. I would beg for surgery when I was about 12 or 13. I wanted puberty blockers so I wouldn't develop any more in that direction that was so alien to me. At school, I was in the group of outsiders. When we were all 12 years old, gender was a big topic at school. My friends were all talking about how they were trans and they were going to transition. They were watching a lot of trans YouTubers. When I watched them, it gave me some kind of hope that maybe I could be okay with my body in the future, like there was hope if I transitioned. Elizabeth says she never saw in my child a child that was a boy or in any way male. They told her that I was wrong to say it's normal to be uncomfortable at puberty, she says. But what we're talking about here is the discomfort of puberty, and it's being rebanded as being trans. I saw a female child who was afraid of womanhood. There was nothing innate about gender going on. I could just see distress. I saw gender being used as a mask for huge fear, pain, and discomfort. As a parent, Elizabeth chose to walk a path of caution in the face of pressure from all quarters to unquestioningly affirm her child as a boy. I'm doing my best with the lack of rule book around this, she says. There's no way to know if you're doing the right thing. I'm always honest about that, just not knowing. We're just trying to allow our kids to grow up and develop their sense of self. In previous generations, we've all been allowed to explore identities and different looks. Nobody was tattooing their goth kids' eyeliner on their faces. The idea that these kids are exceptional, that gender is so unique, it just doesn't make any sense in terms of what we know about adolescence. Yet, by and large, healthcare professionals took a different view. The first child and adolescent psychologist Jack Saw, at 12 years old, affirmed him as the opposite sex and said he could medically transition in the future if he wished. I would solve this lie that if I become a medical patient for life, I'll be happy. He wishes he'd been helped to explore the reasons he felt so alienated in every aspect of his life. I think from the get-go, if I had been given help for the underlying issues like the cause of my dysphoria, the things that were really behind it, if they didn't let it get this bad, if I was basically taught not to hate myself, I wouldn't be in this situation. Despite the enormous pressure the issue has placed on Jack and Elizabeth's relationship, the mum and child are muddling through together, bonded by love and shared understanding that right now there are no answers. I do hope Elizabeth and Jack are doing okay, and I'm sure that you do too. There's more stories in the article in the description of the video. I'll see you later.